Hey guys, so I'm back. I haven't had a video up in a while. That's because it can be a little bit of a time sink putting videos up on YouTube. You have to format the videos, you have to mess with the codec, and you have to do all these steps. And if you're a busy guy, you don't always have time to do this. So I'm kind of experimenting with a new format now. So as you can see, I have a little PowerPoint presentation going on, and I should be able to just quickly get some content like this up, and it won't take me like all day to do. And that way, hopefully, I can on a daily basis get interesting videos out there about spiritual topics. So, with that said, wow, actually, it's been over a year since I made this little channel, and as you can see, I'm still the same backdrop, but I have been in Asia for the last about 6 months, and now I am back in Los Angeles, at least for the time being. And I also have a new book out called The Afterlife and Beyond. And there's a link to that in the description, as well as a link back to afterlifetopics.com. And, I would have a copy of my book to show you guys, but I've given away all my physical copies. So you'll just have to swing by the website if you want to see what the book looks like. All right. Anyway, so let's get going with tonight's topic, which is spotting bogus afterlife information. So this is, of course, something I talk about a lot. The New Age kind of spiritual community, there's lots and lots of information out there, and if you look around YouTube, you'll also find very, very popular channels, very popular video presentations of people talking about the afterlife. And sometimes this is uploaded by like mediums and people getting their own personal take on things. And in my opinion, as kind of an objective researcher, as well as somebody who has been able to practice like out of body experiences to be able to go on that side and talk to people directly about this, I sometimes have a difficult time reading some of these descriptions because it literally makes me cringe. It's not to say that everybody's wrong and I'm the one guy who knows everything, but sometimes when people are attempting to present this topic without like basing it on more than one source, then you get some very strange, skewed perspectives. Like even with me, like I have my own experiences, but I'm not going to just use those experiences to preach what the afterlife is like. Like I'm going to use those as anecdotes, but I'm also going to look at a lot of other people's research and experiences and combine that to form a kind of like an objective idea about what I'm talking about. So in this genre, in this subject, there's lots of people just throwing their ideas out there, just using their imaginations and saying, the afterlife is like this, this, this. Why? Because I think it's like this, because this is my theory and I'm going to present it as fact. And then you get some really weird information. And this really weird information kind of propagates, and the whole subject continues to be completely subjective. So, here's some points I have. Afterlife information is ruled by speculation, not objectivity. Channelers sometimes get things wrong. Channeling can be legitimate, but channeling can also be not legitimate. Sometimes people who claim to be channelers are channeling nothing more than their imaginations. And sometimes the stuff that's coming out of their imaginations is literally pop cultural ideas. So people will basically be bringing up ideas that they've read in their own books and that they've heard other people say, and this kind of goes into their subconscious, and then they think that they're channeling something from the other side, but really all they're doing is going into a relaxed state of mind, and then they're just regurgitating ideas that are buried in their subconscious about things that are not by any means coming from some kind of other realm, but really coming from themselves. This isn't to say that all channelers get things wrong. I think that sometimes channeling can be legitimate, but a lot of times it's also not, and so we have to practice discernment about this. So, this is something I always talk about, and this is something that if you happen to be attending the Afterlife Symposium in Scottsdale coming up in a couple of weeks, this is the big premise, which is that attempts to limit or constrict the afterlife is most likely bogus. So, when you begin hearing somebody who's had a near-death experience, somebody who says that they're a channeler, somebody who says that they're a psychic, somebody who says that they're an expert on the afterlife, when you hear somebody from one of those categories, coming along and saying, in the afterlife, this and that is limited and constricted. So, a good example, I was having a debate with somebody earlier, and he was basically saying, in the afterlife, you can't do anything because it's a completely non-physical state of mind. You just exist like floating around in this, amorphous blob of light. And to have physical experience, you have to incarnate on Earth. And so, if you want to know what it's like to eat a pizza or make love or feel the ground on your feet, the only way to do that is by having a physical incarnation. I asked him, where does he get this information from? And basically, he was pulling it out of somewhere, to put it nicely. He was kind of just coming up with these ideas, and he was teaching it to people like it was fact. And this is, of course, very frustrating, because then everybody kind of like believed him. Everybody clicked like and heart on his comments, and people were completely buying into it. But in fact, there was no factual basis in what he was saying. So this is also similar to how heavy religious prejudice is probably not a path to objective information. So if you ask somebody who's an intense Catholic, an intense Christian, an intense Jehovah's Witness, an intense Muslim, what the afterlife is like, you're going to get that perspective, even if they've had out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences. That's because the Christian heaven, the Muslim heaven, the Hindu heaven, these are, in my estimation, real places, because the afterlife consists of countless multi-dimensional spectrums of reality, different planes of existence, and it can be any of those things. So you can have a near-death experience and literally be meeting God on a throne. Is that really God, the creator of the universe, or is it kind of a manifestation of that religion? Probably going to say it's a manifestation of that religion, especially if it's a guy with a big white beard and a white robe and he's judging people. Okay, so probably scenes like that exist, but that's where it's really wonky, because the afterlife, it's the ultimate experience of confirmation bias. So it's the ultimate experience of having all of your beliefs shown to you when you end up in a place that aligns to what those beliefs are. And really, it takes guides and advanced spiritual beings to help people come out of illusionary types of situations. That's a whole different topic. So there's many legitimate sources of information that we can find to get a better idea what really happens to us after we die, where we really go to. Some reliable sources I can think of is Jürgen Siebe. He is the out-of-body researcher, explorer. He has a couple books out, Multidimensional Man, Vistas of Infinity. He also writes more these days about like meditation concepts. He has a book called The 10-Minute Moment. Jürgen's a friend. We've done some webinars together. You can Google Jürgen and Cyrus. We had a webinar recently on Karen Swain's podcast, and that's a really, really cool show, so you should check that out. And he's spent an enormous amount of time in other realms. Jürgen as well, it's actually William Bullman. He's one of the top out-of-body writers, and for the most part I agree with the stuff that Bullman presents, although he has some ideas that I disagree with. He has a book called Higher Self Now, and I don't really agree with some of his concepts. Again, that's another subject. But as an out-of-body explorer, he I think, presents things accurately, as so many other out-of-body explorers do, as well as myself. I also practice out-of-body exploration. And I would recommend staying away from Tom Campbell. I know that's a little bit like hard-hitting for me just to throw that out there, but Tom Campbell, I write about this on afterlifetopics.com. Campbell seems to confuse lucid dreaming with real astral projection, so he has some very unusual ideas. In particular, he believes that the astral realm that we see is more like an illusion, and that the people we meet are not real, that they're all illusionary constructs created by our subconscious minds. And this is true if you're having a lucid dream. It's not true if you're really projecting. So again, it's a perfect example of somebody obtaining wrong information, wrong data, and then presenting it as fact and spreading misinformation. Silver Birch, the This was the mediumship team of Maurice Barbanel, and Silver Birch was, rather, there was an American Indian, I guess that was whom Silver Birch was named after. And this American Indian character was also a medium, living basically on the astral plane. The American Indian was channeling, or rather channeling, but receiving information from a level even higher than him. So that's the funny thing about the afterlife, is what we learn is that on that side there are mediums there just as there are mediums here. So Silver Birch was really a team of Maurice Barbanel, the American Indian, and then the higher kind of collective of entities existing above the astral plane in very high levels. And so it was all channeling down through Maurice Barbanel, and he himself was a very powerful, highly verifiable medium. So the Silver Birch books are good sources of information, and there's even an article written through the Maurice Barbanel Silver Birch team that describes exactly what happens to you when you die, and it even explains that you'll find that you still have a flesh and blood ethereal body, which is kind of a perfected representation of your physical body. So you kick the bucket, and you'll find that your ethereal body is the point that you kind of on a subconscious level, how you think about yourself, how you want to look, how you want to be, will manifest itself physically on that side. So if you die as a 90-year-old man and in your heart you are a 25-year-old, then you will appear on that side as a 25-year-old in perfect, vibrant health. So that's one example, and we know it's reliable data because it lines up with all of the other credible sources of information. Excuse me. And another credible source of information is Leslie Flint, because Leslie Flint, as a direct voice medium, he was heavily tested by scientists. So basically, he would go into trance, and then voices would manifest in the room independent of him. As an example, scientists would fill his mouth with colored water, and then they would find that the colored water was still in his mouth at the end of the seance, so it was impossible for him to have been faking the voices. And so the voices would arise externally from his body, usually like on his shoulder, and they would come through an ectoplasmic voice box. Now, it was a crude methodology because many of the voices basically sound the same. They all have the kind of deep voice like this. So some people criticize it because of this fact, but that was because of the limitations of how they were doing it. But credible researchers were able to show that the voices were manifesting from an anomalous means, and then he continued doing this for about 30 years, and then there's many tapes on the internet of people communicating from that side, including deceased loved ones visiting people in the seance rooms and giving in-depth explanations about what their side is like, of what the so-called astral world is like, which is, mind you, the same astral world that people like Jurgen, people like myself, and many other people have visited and have been able to report back after having direct experiences on that side. To give you an idea, you can tell it's reliable, real afterlife data when it shows that it is a continued existence like here. Yeah, I think some people have, shall we say, merging experiences, or they transcend the so-called astral. They end up in some kind of an amorphous existence where it's maybe a mental plane, and they don't really have a physical, solid experience. For some people, that's what they want. But I think the vast majority of people, they go into these astral conditions, and that you can see in this video, in this slide, that is some of Jurgen's artwork, and that's a astral office building. Right, so this is an example of a higher plane above this one, where people may find themselves in like cityscape environments, and it's very common for out-of-body explorers to see these types of things because there's a continued existence, a continued civilization. I'd even go so far as to say that there's continued industry on the astral side of Earth. So even in this photo, you can see like a little airplane up there. Totally common for me to see and know about these types of environments. I've literally found like people on that side who have day jobs that they enjoy, and they may very well go to work in a place like this. As weird as it sounds, like this is something that people can't sometimes wrap their minds around, that life on that side can continue as normal in such a way. Yes, everyone has powers. Yes, everybody can create and shape things with their thoughts and their minds. But at the same time, if you look at it kind of on a macro scale, life kind of continues in the human sense as normal. People have jobs, there's industries, there is technology, there's inventions, there's people creating things, working toward goals, organizations, cities, there's a lot of recreation, from nightclubs to restaurants to all types of things like that. This can all be found on the astral levels of the afterlife. And mind you, if we believe what Paramahansa Yogananda described in Autobiography of a Yogi, this astral level is like 100 times bigger than our own material cosmos. So there's countless worlds to explore, there's countless extraterrestrial civilizations. It just basically extends almost infinitely. And all of that is possible on the astral side. So civilization does seem to continue. So there's higher density advanced physics, but it's still physical in a sense. It's different than here, but it's not like an alien environment. So those are the main points I wanted to address, and I think it's very crucial to think about sources of objective afterlife data and notice how it all fits together, all of the reliable sources. And then when you hear on the internet somebody giving a description of the afterlife, it definitely behooves you to compare that and line it up to the objective information. So for more about this, check out afterlifetopics.com. You can check out our Facebook group, Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, which has about 7,500 people in it at the moment. Also check out victorzammit.com. It's a great resource of objective afterlife information. And, it just keeps growing. I listed a few sources, but the objective afterlife data, it's something that it's a library of information that continues to grow, and it's definitely one of the most interesting fields anybody can learn about, because even this channel is just a tip of a vast iceberg. Okay, so this is Cyrus, and thanks for checking out this video. Hope it helps you. Hope it has served some purpose to you, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and give this channel a subscribe, because it's kind of silly if I have no subscribers, no one's watching this. With your help, I can get some of these ideas out there to a wider audience. Okay, talk to you guys later.